Well, welcome everybody to the July 2022 edition of Streets for All Happy Hour. We're so excited to have Supervisor Solis with us as our special guest. And before we get to our conversation with the supervisor, we're going to go through a few quick updates. We're going to give you a quick update on our state measures, a very exciting update about our ballot measure, talk about the election that just happened, an update on Venice Boulevard for All, a few wins of the month, and then we will get to our conversation with the supervisor. Our icebreaker this time, and Supervisor Solis, you're welcome to participate as well, is which future metro project are you most excited about? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bubba, who will give us an update on state measures and answer that question. Bubba.
Thanks, Michael, and welcome everybody, and welcome Supervisor Solis. To answer that question, the metro project I'm most excited about, because I live right off the Expo line, is the regional connector, because it's going to make it a lot easier for me to get to Union Station and hopefully take a few train jaunts on Amtrak, which I haven't done yet, and I'm excited to do it. So on the state team, we've been really hard at work for this entire legislative session, along with Mark Vuksevich and our entire team. If you go to the next slide, we are basically right in the middle of the session. We're in legislative recess right now. But if you want to go to our website, streetsforall.org/state, this gives you a list of all of the bills we've endorsed this year, including 5 bills that we're sponsoring, which means we're very much responsible in helping create those bills from the beginning. So yeah, go to our website and check those bills out. And so far, 15 of the 20 that we originally endorsed are still alive. So we have 75% have made it through their second House policy committees and are on their way to the Appropriations Committee for the second House. So once they clear that hurdle, which is about mid-August, they're going to be going to the second House for a vote, for a floor vote, and then to the governor's desk for a signature. So these 15 bills are about 3 stops away from becoming law, which is really exciting. So far, not to focus on the negative, but these are 5 bills that were casualties of the session that we endorsed, and we're excited to support these again next year in the goals that that they intended to address. So AB 2336 was a bill that would have created a pilot program for speed safety cameras, which is a proven method to reduce speeding. 1975 would have done a robust count across the state of bus shelter facilities. 2388 would have required driver's license, a provisional period for those drivers 18 to 21 before they got their I guess, standard license, because we found that drivers 18 to 21 are not as safe actually as drivers 16 to 18 who are required to have this provisional period. AB 2237 would have required all new transportation projects to quantify their greenhouse gas reduction goals and to be evaluated on those greenhouse gas reductions. And AB 1778 would have stopped freeway widening in polluted or impoverished areas. So those bills, we still are very much believe in the mission, and we're going to take them up again next session. We still have 15 really important bills that would make public transit free for students, and bills that would give a tax rebate for being car free or car light. Really amazing legislation that we're looking to push through right now. So on August 1, we're going to reconvene from the summer recess. On August 12, the bills must be through the second House fiscal committees at that point. And on August 25th is the last day to amend our bills. And on the 31st, they must have passed out of the second House floor. So we're going to know what bills pass the legislature by August 31, and it's up to the governor by September 30 to sign or veto those bills. So we're going to find out pretty quickly which of these 15 bills we got through. So we're really excited. It could be a transformational year for transportation. And I'll give it back over to Michael for Healthy Streets update.
Thanks, Bubba. I think the metro project I'm most excited about is the Crenshaw line, because I've been to cities around the world that connect their airports to their transit systems, and connecting LAX by rail to the rest of Los Angeles is a fantastic idea. So really excited about that. So a very quick update on Healthy Streets LA. As you can tell, I'm basically living in this shirt the last few months. Just a reminder, it's a City of Los Angeles ballot measure that would mandate the city automatically implement its mobility plan whenever streets are repaved. And the big update is we just turned in over 102,000 signatures to the city clerk. We were self-validating. We know at least 74,000 of those are valid. There may be a lot more, and we only needed 61,000 to qualify. So we're very confident we'll qualify. We should know by the end of this week. We were hoping to know by this happy hour, but the city clerk doesn't work on our schedule. There's also a parallel motion introduced by Council President Martinez based on Healthy Streets LA, and it tells the city how to implement it. And it's basically an implementation plan based on equity, as well as going on the mobility plan, two things we're very much in support of. And we, however, are still angling and are trying to get to 8 council votes to adopt our motion when it comes to city council. The biggest reason we want our version adopted is if the political winds shift in the future, city council could undo their ordinance with 8 council votes. Whereas if they adopt ours, because it's qualified by signatures, they would have to actually go back to the voters and do another ballot measure in order to change it. So we support the council version, but we definitely want our ordinance passed and to be the foundation and have that high bar in order to change. So very exciting. We'll keep you posted and let you know how you can support at council. And I'm going to turn it over to Olga to give an election update.
Thank you, Michael. I'm also living in my Healthy Streets shirt. Thank you everyone for being here. My favorite upcoming Metro project is probably all of the double track initiatives with MetroLink. I'm very excited for MetroLink to become a more robust commuter system. As we know, lots of folks use it, but it doesn't run as often as we want it to. As far as elections, could you hit the next slide, please? We are so excited to announce 3 of our 16 endorsed candidates won their races outright, including today's guest, Hilda Solis of the BOS. We also had Laura Friedman, an assembly member, won outright as well, and Glendale City Council's Ara Najarian, who is taking over as Metro Chair as well. So we are super excited that 3 of our folks won outright. And then could you hit the next slide? We also have the following 8 candidates are all advancing to their runoffs. Many of them already, had powerful showings and are absolutely going to win, but just didn't get across that threshold yet. So we're super excited to support all of them. So many of these folks have been longtime members of the Streets for All community, and we're really excited to get more folks into power who care about the same things we do, better transit. That's about it. You guys will hear more about some of our other races that we'll be endorsing in that we didn't endorse in before. Just watch out for our newsletter. I'm going to pass it over to Josh to talk about Venice Boulevard for All.
Thanks, Olga. I'm super excited to ride the North Hollywood to Pasadena BRT when that opens. Love a new bus route. If you guys aren't familiar, Venice for All is a campaign we've been working on for a couple of years. If you go to the next slide. It's going to add protected bike lanes, dedicated bus lanes to Venice Boulevard, which is a really critical street that's very dangerous right now. If you go to the next slide, the big update is that LADOT and Palms Neighborhood Council have announced an official partnership for outreach and then also installations. So LADOT's proposal aligns with the mobility plan. If you go to the next slide, you can see what's suggesting. We're supporting option 2, which has the dedicated bus lanes, the protected bike lanes that are parking protected. Super excited about this. It'll be a couple miles long, and we're also excited about the timeline. If you go to the next slide. This is going to happen super fast. LADOT is trying to install it by the end of the year. So this should be in the ground by November, which is a really big deal for safety and everyone that commutes on this really important street. Next is wins of the month. Passing it over to Bubba.
Actually, me.
Michael.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Quick win of the month in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is not known for being a bastion of progressive road design, but we'll take the wins where we can get them. So the city just approved Class 2 bike lanes on Doheny for most of Doheny. Some of it is Class 3. They are in the door zone, but they're going to be 6 feet wide. It's a 25-mile-per-hour street, so we think it'll be relatively comfortable. It fits without any parking or traffic lane loss, which was a requirement from the city council. So this is not revolutionary in the scheme of things, but for Beverly Hills, this is great. And we cheer their progress. Going to toss it over to Bubba.
Thanks, Michael. On another win of the month, Streets for All was a proud sponsor and organizer of the Culver City Pride Ride, which took place, Culver City Pride Ride and Rally, which took place on Sunday, June 26th, the tail end of Pride Month. This was really an awesome event. It was the second year ever that Culver City officially celebrated Pride. We had over 300 riders come out for a 6-mile ride celebrating the inclusiveness and diversity of what a city can be. And we ended in a rally on Main Street for a more inclusive city. And if you go to the next slide, we also have some great news out of Culver City. The city took a very large step towards parking reform, which we know to be parking requirements are a major contributor to rising housing prices, as well as incentivizing people to continue to use their cars if we continue to make car travel the easiest, most efficient option. And parking requirements in residential and business commercial development continue to make that worse and worse. So we're proud in Culver City that in the most recent city council meeting, or the one before last, the city council members, 3 out of 5 of them recommended to city staff requested city staff provide them with a zoning amendment to abolish parking minimums citywide, which is pretty huge for LA County. So we're going to be seeing that come to council for a final approval in the next few months. And they're also asking staff for recommendations and options of parking maximums. So this is really going to help reduce car dependency in Culver City and beyond, and allow for more affordable housing options, safer streets, and just more equitable way of getting around.
Cool. The Willoughby Traffic coming, this is a greenway. That's a project between LADOT and West Hollywood. They're producing cut-through traffic. They've been installing a bunch of diverters and improving it. You can see right here, they just recently installed a couple bollards to stop people from doing massy U-turns, which were creating dangerous conditions for biking and walking. So we're excited to keep working on spot improvements for this. I'm gonna hand it over to Olga.
So many of you have probably heard about the relatively recent death of cyclist Andrew Gelmert up in Griffith Park. Off of that, we wanted to thank council members Nithya Raman and Assembly member Laura Friedman for their work in getting part of Griffith Drive shut down to car traffic. This is huge for us. Next, we might even go for Crystal Springs. We'll see. But this is going to reduce cut-through traffic on the most dangerous portion of Griffith Drive around Traveltown for cyclists and pedestrians. It's going to make it safe to walk and bike in our biggest park that we have. And it's really going to protect us from those 5 highway ramps that we have to deal with if we want to go to a park. So we're super excited.
Thanks. And last but not least, we've been working on an extension to the Boundary Creek bike path. It currently ends in Cronenthal Park in Culver City. This would extend it to Venice and Cochrane. And this is a rendering of what that could look like. We are so excited that Council District 10 is going to be making a motion at City Council soon to make it an official Bureau of Engineering project. And they have found funding for a feasibility study, which is the first step. And then that will produce enough information to then go out and hopefully get grant funding for the whole project. So this is a very concrete step forward for this project and very excited about it. And last but not least, subscribe to our socials at Streets for All on all the major platforms, streetsforall.org/get-involved if you want to volunteer. And our merch is great. You should buy it. Every piece of merch goes as a donation and helps make the streets safer. Quick preview for August. We're excited to have Tokes, who's the secretary of CalSTA, and that'll be August 10th at 5 p.m. So I am so excited to welcome Supervisor Solis. County Supervisor Hilda Solis is a lifelong resident of the San Gabriel Valley. She's a graduate of Cal Poly Pomona and USC. She served on the Rio Hondo Community College Board, in the State Assembly and State Senate, and in the House of Representatives. Prior to becoming supervisor, she served as Secretary of Labor under President Obama, the first Latina to ever serve in the presidential cabinet. She represents the San Gabriel Valley, Northeast LA, and the East Side as Los Angeles County Supervisor for the 1st District, and until weeks ago, as chair of the Metro Board. So Supervisor, we're so grateful for your time. We're going to jump right into it because I know time is short tonight, and I'm going to toss it over to Baba for our first question.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you for being here, Supervisor. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges we've faced as Streets for All is, you know, different agencies having to do a lot of communicating with each other, different government agencies in order to get something done. So there can be a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And we have our individual cities, LA County, Metro, state, and federal programs. So since you have experience basically at all levels of government, can you sort of explain to us the relationship between all of these agencies in terms of how the work actually gets done on the ground in LA?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to Streets for All and for having me as your guest speaker. And I want to thank Michael, Bubba, yourself, Josh, and Olga, and everyone else. And, you know, to be sure, this is a complicated system. It's not easy to navigate. And having now served on Metro Board for the last 8 years, I can tell you it is an entanglement that's not easy for even our public to understand and local residents. And I can see where there are people who really get upset because they want to see things happening right now. But one of the things that I've tried to do is help to make sure that we have cooperation and that we have community input and that we respect advocacy. And your group, in my opinion, is one of those legitimate groups that we need to pay attention to. And I personally want to thank you for helping us with the BRT in the Pasadena area and in my district in Eagle Rock, because you really are ahead of the curve here. And I want to challenge you also to spread your wings out farther in my own district and around LA County. I know it's tough, but it is needed and it's necessary, because what you all are setting a foundation for is very practical, very reasonable, and more people need to hear about it. So I certainly will want to help to work with you on that. One of our priorities, though, on the Metro Board and as a County Board of Supervisors, to make sure that we try to augment and expand federal and state resources as well as local resources and any other philanthropic opportunities that we can to help expand upon, I think, the notion of making sure that we're building regional projects that really help to empower our communities. And I say that because right now I represent one of the, I hate to say it, one of the poorest districts in LA County. Of the 5 board members, ours is most hard hit by many things. And I would just give you an idea that our ridership on our buses and our rail system, their average income is $18,000 for a household. How do you think these people get by? They need to have assistance. We need to continue to push out how we can get funding for fairness system, but also to make sure that our students and our college students, as well as individuals who are essential workers, continue to help them to be able to thrive and to use our rail system, to get out of their cars and to use other modes of transportation. And I think we're on the cusp of doing that right now. I'm going to be pushing very, very hard right now because my district changed a bit. I used to represent about 7 or 8 cities in the Southeast communities, which were very, very poor. And I pushed out as much as I could on the West Santa Ana branch, and know that one of our first steps there is going to look at the most impoverished area. If we're going to build anything, we need to concentrate in those areas where ridership will be high and where the need in terms of neglect has happened, and to correct that, because this is about equity. The other thing I want to mention to you is that I'm very, very focused right now on the east side extension and making sure that we have all our cities along that corridor understanding that there are opportunities that, even though through Measure R and Measure M, we ask for cities to come forward and do things, many of them aren't capable. They don't have the staffing, engineering staff, and the financial ability. So we need to provide technical assistance to them and do it through Metro funds and support them, but also think about what that corridor would look like. If we can help them plan for more housing along those transit areas, and also supporting the local mom and pop businesses, because the last thing I want to see is them displaced. And I've heard that since the first couple of meetings when I started as a Board of Supervisor on the Metro Board. Little Tokyo, what happened there was devastating. And I can tell you that we need to learn from those experiences and make sure that we're providing assistance, technical, but also revenue for people so we don't displace more communities. That's really important to me right now. As a Metro Board member, we need to do more. And I'm happy that Ara Najarian is going to be our incoming chair. My term there went so fast, and it was during the pandemic, the hardest time where so many people were wondering, how are we going to get to work? How are we going to continue our lifestyle? And Metro had up, including for those people that were unhoused and including those individuals, essential workers, but also our students. And I'm happy to say that we were able to work very well with our CEO, Stephanie Wiggins, who I give a lot of credit to. We're trying to reconfigure and reimagine how we see Metro transforming itself and being more respectful of the ridership and people that really need assistance. And I really love that you all are spending so much time on your own volunteering to do that, because I wish that more organizations would be so thoughtful and empathetic to what is going on with our residents in all of LA County. So kudos to you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Bubba, you took the words out of my mouth. Before I ask the next question, do you want to play favorites? Do you have a favorite Metro project that's coming up, that's opening, that you'd like to call out?
Mine aren't opening up fast enough, I'll be honest with you, but I will tell you that I'm happy that the regional connector, because I still remain representing that area. And with us being a major hub, being able to transform how many people from all parts of LA County are going to be able to come to a juncture and be able to come in and really realize transportation in one ride. I mean, that is amazing. And we're not getting enough credit for it, to be honest. And I really want to thank everybody that has been working on it long before I even got here. But more importantly, what we did to bring about more jobs for local hire, more women in these construction areas that are working on the project. And now, just today I just came a couple hours ago from the Grand Hotel that's right across the street from Walt Disney, right? The concert center. And it's going to be a hub. The regional connector is not too far. We're going to be able to bring people there, not just from overseas. That's not my agenda totally. My agenda is making sure that people in LA County who pay for this system can use it, come down, enjoy the arts, enjoy an open space, whether it's biking, walking, or whatever it is, but to use our transportation system and to feel safe about it, and to make sure that it's the best that we can provide them, because they deserve nothing less.
We're so excited about the regional connector too. So switching gears for a minute, want to talk to you about freeway widening. Streets for All started a coalition called Destruction for Nada, which highlights how continuing to widen freeways and destroy housing not only doesn't solve traffic, but also makes climate change worse. In your time on the Metro Board, you have authored motions that seem to agree with this premise, from modernizing the highway program to reaffirming the canceled 710 North money can be used for multimodal projects. Despite all this progress, Metro still has plans on the books, along with Caltrans, to widen hundreds of miles of freeways, which will essentially negate any greenhouse gas emission savings from transit and active transportation projects that we're spending billions on. Do you see a future where Metro actually stops widening highways completely and instead focuses on buses, trains, and active transportation as the modes of the future?
I would hope so. And unfortunately, it takes incremental steps, but I can tell you in the last at least 2 or 3 years that I have been totally engaged, not just with the 710 South, but 710 North. And that was even long before I was a board member, very supportive of not disrupting our communities, plowing through and displacing so many households and people, low-income people. And we've seen that happen time and time again with the 5 freeway, Chavez Ravine, all of these things that have just continued to gentrify and hurt so many working class people. We do have to stop. And I'm very happy now that even the federal administration has weighed in, as well as Caltrans. But we need to do more. We need to really sensitize and educate members of the boards on Metro, because not all of them, I think, are fully in agreement. Sometimes they like to put, for example, the shipping yards and the fact that we have this dilemma that's going on right now with traffic and trucking and making sure that we get goods and services through our communities. But the fact of the matter is, we know that many people have been imposed upon through health impacts because of bad air, exhaust, diesel fuel, all of that, and health outcomes that are not good, that we as a society continue to have to pay. And as a county board of supervisor, I can tell you asthma rates, cancer rates are much higher in those areas, and they'll continue to be there. And we can't just think that one solution is widening, that's going to alleviate congestion. We already know that experiment didn't work when we did the I wasn't there, but the 405 freeway. What happened? it's even more congested. I try to avoid it as much as I can. But I will tell you that one of my priorities is going to be that we can really work hard to see how we can come up with other alternatives for the 710 South, the 710 North, as we have, trying to work very closely with our neighbors there, our cities, as well as our municipal government, but also people that also are impacted, like Cal State LA, East Los Angeles, and making sure that transit works for everybody. Not everywhere we go, the freeway will take folks where they need to go, and even a rail system. So we have to think about other modes of transportation, which means also electrifying as much as we can, or looking at how we can increase our carbon footprint by creating vehicles that are electrically powered, and that means our buses. So creating opportunities to do that, incentivizing that, the Metro Board should be able to do that. I think we're on that trajectory, but we need to keep pushing. And I think groups like yours can really help us out by educating the public. Lord knows they're not always going to listen to Hilda Solis because she's an elected official. They're going to think it's in my own self-interest. But when they hear it from organizations like yours, it matters most. And I have concerns right now with current talk about expanding the 605 freeway. I represent a good part of that corridor. Many are low-income, disadvantaged, that have had multiple environmental impacts for many, many decades. And to see that their houses, some of them 100 or more may be taken, is not correct. And we'll fight on that issue, and we'll see where we land. But we need to have folks like yourself and other organizations to help us educate homeowners and people in the community and other elected officials that represent that corridor. And we can't allow for outside lobbying interests to intercede and impede that progress. So I'm hopeful, crossing my fingers, that we can work together with you on that. And that's going to be one of our priorities agendas now that I have been reelected. I get to serve another 4 years. So yes, it's going to be very important. 710 South, 710 North, 605, and then any other freeway expansion that's being talked about. I know that I can't stop everything, but if voices come together and we can work on initiatives, I think we can have a tremendous impact. So I hope to look forward to working with you on those items that I just raised.
I think part of the problem sometimes is the Metro staff that conveniently tells the board one thing and then does another, but I'll leave that for another conversation.
Honest, we got to keep them honest. And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen a dramatic change in the last year and a half, last 2 years. Some of those folks are no longer there. And I give credit to the new leadership there, because I think that Stephanie Wiggins, you know, she's new in this position, but she's not new to understanding how you work and you build coalitions. And she sees and hears what's going on out in the ether. And she also knows, politically speaking, how important it is for us to be aligned so that we can get state and federal funding to help provide alleviation for those communities that have been most impacted. So I'm really excited about that. Strong supporter of what federal, highway administration is trying to do to trying to change that trajectory and not disrupt low-income communities and places that have really displaced and hurt so many of our communities. We don't need that right now. We are in a crisis mode. We don't need houses to be taken. We don't need to see more pollution in areas where people and their health impacts are costing our society and the taxpayer more money.
Agreed. Going over to Olga for the next question.
Thank you. Supervisor, last week you were quoted in the LA Times about Metro's new Safety Ambassador program, which I'm personally a huge fan of. How will this program achieve Metro's stated goals of reducing racial bias and enforcement while also improving the rider experience?
Well, I'm really excited that we were able to come to some agreement on hiring up at least 300 ambassadors. And they're going to have to be trained, and they're going to work alongside with some of our mental health teams that we are now working through a contract, an MOU with LA County, and also to not just go out. I mean, they don't have the authority to carry weapons or cite people, but they can certainly be the voice of reason and to articulate their concerns of people that are that are riding the rail and the bus system, but also people that are unhoused and other people that are facing any kind of discrimination. And how can we make the the service better. Customer service has to be a top priority. And I really do believe the ambassador program will work. It's already been demonstrated in the BART system in San Francisco, and I think back east as well. And I think that we just need to give it a chance. There are some people on the board, I think, that don't believe that it's going to be possible. I do. And I don't think that we need to go back to the same contracting mode with all the public safety officials that were involved in previous cycles. I think in the next 6 months, we're going to evaluate that and see what really works. And we really do have to engage with our local cities that have their own transportation security operations and see how we can help enlighten them as well. Because it isn't just a metro issue, it's also with other bus and transit industries that are out there that also need to take a note and pay attention as to what our ridership and what people really want. We want people to feel safe, number one. We want ridership to come back since we're providing for a fair system for our young people, those in secondary school as well as community college, and for the LIFE program. I want to make sure that ridership can go up. That's a commitment that I think all of us have. And Stephanie Wiggins made it very clear in our State of the Union message just the other day that we had, saying that we have to build back our ridership. The only way we're going to get there is we have trust and we have open dialogue, and that we really are transparent in how we're providing services and we articulating those concerns. So I care about the people who ride on the bus system, and I also care about the employees. And I want to make sure that this rhetoric about how unsafe it is to ride on our systems, that we begin to really peel that onion behind and say, no, these are some of the actions that we're taking that are proactive, that are going to help to remedy that and show metrics for it. And we're going to have to do that on a regular basis so the public will understand and see that we're having some positive results. So I'm very enthusiastic, and I'm happy that our CEO and the board, the majority of the board at least, believes that this is a remedy that can work for all of us.
Thank you, Supervisor. I live near the LA River, and I love it as a place to bike and see nature, despite a lot of it being a sort of a cement channel. A significant amount of the river is in your district, and the LA River Master Plan is a really exciting development. The latest version did cause some opposition from communities that had previously supported it. How do you see the LA River playing a role in transportation and public space in the future? Do you think the river itself will ever be restored to a natural basin with dirt and fish? And how important is the bike path vis-a-vis a new park and public space for communities along the river in your view?
Well, first of all, it's a 51 mile of the river. So I don't represent all of it. I do represent the downtown area and then going down a little bit further. But I am very invested in making sure that, number one, first of all, that we don't displace people and folks that live along that area, because we've already seen some of that happen in the northern part of the LA River. And I don't want to see gentrification. I don't want to see displacement. I want to see that there's harmony here and that there's an equal respect for people who live in the area and those that want to somehow improve upon it. And let's make sure that that discussion and communication occurs at every level. And so for the past, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years that I've been working with our Department of Public Works, where we are in charge of the master plan. Part of our agenda, my agenda, was to say, we better make sure that we have as many meetings and committee groups that are established so we hear from every corner of our county about the LA River and how that can transform some of our communities. Some areas that have been very blighted, that have been neglected, that could somehow see some infusion of safety, security, and economic development, but not on what I want or a developer wants. What does a community want? And so that discussion is going on right now. And I think it can happen. I think it can't all be kayaking, because I know you can do that up north, but you can't do it down in the southeast area. So what do? Let's think about all these ideas that transverse and let us work together on it. I have a deep interest in seeing that we can make paths available, walking paths, pedestrian, horse, equestrian, but also making sure that people can get to and from where they need to go. So we have to establish some infrastructure so that that's more easily accomplished. Then we ought to take advantage of that and make sure that the federal government and the state government are working with us so we can ascertain the funding appropriately to do that and see how we can best serve our community. Right now, one of the latest things that I was working on was, and I know it got pushed back because people, I don't think, fully understand what was being looked at in the Southeast communities that I represented. We were looking at developing a cultural center with Assembly Speaker Rendon, as well as with architect Frank Gehry. Doesn't mean we're going to displace people because it's a cemented part of the river. We'd be looking at something, a project to develop a cultural center and potentially have the West Santa Ana line have a stop there. So people could, from other parts of the county that have never seen anything like that, could come and experience that and have some venues and opportunity to see people from the area actually thrive in the arts, in areas that could give them jobs as well, but also making sure that it could be an economic stimulus for that area that has been so deprived. There is nothing in the scale or magnitude that I think should be there to help those residents who have been so dependent on our system of transportation. And I mean the bus riders, there's literally nothing there. So I'm going to continue to be an advocate for the West Santa Ana branch, continue to see how we can get our bus system, but also our walking paths, bike, everything, and making sure that we have safe communities that are well maintained and respectful. And that also means well lighting. That means also safety and security for people who use that as their only means of recreation. And I can tell you, as someone who grew up in an area that was very park poor, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to go to Joshua, to go out to Yosemite, or even sometimes even going to the beach. So it means a lot for people, working class people, to have an outlet to help engage families of their children to understand the beauty and nature of what is there. The LA River is something for everybody, and it can offer many different things, but it's going to be a little different. There's no cookie cutter that's going to fit every part of that 51 miles. And I think that it's an opportunity for us to really think about and respect people that live there, but also how those investments are made and making sure that we have community benefits that they're guaranteed. That's really important. So I'm going to be looking at that in the upcoming years and how we move forward on that. And I hope I can count on your support on that as well. And I do want to mention one thing that I might have forgot. Part of gentrification along the river is people lose their housing. So if we're going to be looking at developing these areas, then we need to look at land banking and acquiring properties so that they're not overdeveloped, and that we hold those for affordable housing or for recreation that will really benefit the communities that are going to be most impacted. And that's not a new concept, but it's one that we're pushing not only Metro, but as an LA County Board of Supervisor. And I'm happy that we're moving in that direction right now. You know, people don't know this, but Metro is probably one of the bigger housing developers right now in terms of helping to establish with the goal of setting up affordable housing. We already have 300 units that we've already provided in hard-pressed areas. And we need to do more of that. We need to think about that along the river as well. And not something that benefits the developer necessarily, but actually can bring, I think, recreation, but also a standard of living that can be respected by the people who live there and don't have to be displaced.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just wanted to ask for a quick update on one issue. In November, the LA Times ran that story or that report that predominantly cyclists of color and predominantly Latino cyclists were being cited much more frequently and more disproportionately than others. And since then, the Board of Supervisors voted to move towards decriminalizing bicycle violations. Where are we on that timeline?
Well, I think thank you for raising it, because it is one of those equity issues that obviously has to be brought to the public's attention. And what we found is that, it doesn't work. The sheriff's department in this case was not doing a good job. It doesn't show that there were really any folks that were somehow involved in crime. They were profiling people that were riding bikes, many of whom in East Los Angeles, as an example, we're trying to get to and fro work or to whatever appointments. Doesn't mean you should be criminalized because you're brown and you're riding a bike. And I think that we have really raised the attention in part by groups like yours and others, and we need to continue to do that. And it has to stop. And those, in many ways, are illegal searches in my mind. So I think that we know we have to do better. We have to come back, though, and come up with a better plan and an ordinance so that we can figure out that totally stops. Some of which will happen, I hope, in the couple of months that come in November, if we see a change in leadership in terms of the Sheriff's Department, which I'm hoping all of you will weigh in, which is very important because we see too many inequities, not just in East LA, but in other parts of Northeast LA and other parts of South Central, where the same thing occurs time and time again. Black and Latino are profiled because somehow people believe, or those in charge in public safety have this perception that somehow they're doing something illegal or illicit. And we can't have that. So we really do have to make sure that we change the rules of the game and the culture. And that's going to take a lot of help on behalf of organizations like yourself. So I want to see that. I want to see also recommendations how to implement and align a program towards a Vision Zero action plan. And that's something that we'll be working on, I think, later this month with my staff, and maybe talking to you about introducing a follow-up motion to help formalize that ordinance and bring it to fruition. So we do need help because we don't think mobility should be criminalized in any way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. One last question before we go to the audience. When we reached out to you about the no to Pasadena BRT and the beautiful Boulevard option for Colorado Boulevard, you were really supportive, and your public support helped shift the winds at Metro and LA City Council. So thank you for that. As County Supervisor and Metro Board member, where do you draw the line in weighing in on issues that individual cities in LA County are still considering? Do you view the position as an opportunity to advocate for more regional solutions? What should Metro do in situations where individual cities won't play ball with a needed regional solution? For example, thinking about Burbank voting against dedicated lanes for the same BRT system. So I was just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that's where coalition building and advocacy take place. And you know that. That's number one rule for me. I mean, that's how I got involved in politics. And it's go directly to the residents, go to the people that are going to be most impacted and educate them. And I think that that's going to be very important. I was very happy to see our Najarian come along and support us, even though he represents those areas, those cities on the Metro Board. So it took some time, but I think more advocacy and education is where we have to come. We still are going to have some naysayers, as you know, but that doesn't mean that they dominate everything. And I think I was very moved by the presentation that you all gave us. Almost, that feels like 2 years ago, or during the pandemic, right? All this was going on, and it was really persuasive to me. And I could see where a plan like that can be replicated and used in other parts of LA County. And I think more people need to know about it. And I think the more they know, and once they hear more about the success of this BRT, then we can see more of that coming forward. And I have another BRT that I'm going to be working on too. And that's the one that would go from Union Station all the way to Pomona. And we need assistance there as well, because the community isn't well organized as you all are. So that's why I keep making this plea that, somehow we can expand your role and get you all involved or help us with some of the groups that we do have out there. So we are a bigger force, and that we continue to push for equity. Equity is very important.
I think one of the challenges, Beautiful Boulevard was spearheaded, not by us, we helped, but by activists, mostly in Eagle Rock. But they had the privilege of having that time and those talents and that energy to be able to do that, and not every community does. So I do think it's an important topic. Okay, let's go to the audience. The first question is, at Metro's State of the Agency event, incoming Chair Najarian mentioned the importance of accelerating Metro's BRT corridors. For example, La Cienega, Broadway, Venice. Do you think there's any chance of that happening?
I think that we're learning what is working. And I think the more information, again, as we go out and talk to the public and share the successes and how we are actually making life easier and better and cleaner for people in terms of the environment and all of that, and getting people where they really need to get, and doing it in a fashion that helps all of that and really changes the, how could I say, the face of Metro. I think we can get things done. I know it's going to take time because we're talking with broad strokes here, but we have to work together and keep it going. I'm very supportive of that. I think it could work. You don't just always have to put, track on the road or on the land. It can happen through using BRT and using other more constructive and rational approaches that aren't going to be as costly, but yet meet the goals. And if we can demonstrate that, I think we can do it. And I think we have a new leadership at Metro that can help us get there. And I think that that's really, really critical right now.
Thank you. Next question. This is, I'll just read it. I think we're all supportive of the big projects Metro has in the works, but some basic things like functional next bus train arrival signs and shade at bus stops seem to get left behind. What can we do to make sure Metro doesn't overlook the basics?
I have been a big advocate. You can ask my staff, Martin, because I represent a large portion of the unincorporated areas, not just East LA, but now Rowland Heights and farther east, where you can see the underlying, how could I say, neglect. And I don't want to say racism, but deprivation, where you don't find coverage or lighting adequate for those areas where people are so reliant on our bus system. And it is shameful. And I've asked our own Department of Public Works, what can they do to improve that? I've seen seniors, disabled people, young people, women, people that I've heard been assaulted or afraid to go out at certain hours to ride the bus, even though they have to go to work, because they're afraid of their safety. And we ought to do a better job and make sure that it's clean, that everything is safe for people. And until we do that, I don't know how we're going to get by unless we really insist on that. So I would hope that that's something maybe your group and ours and others can really work together on, because I'm totally there. I think that's so important. I remember my mother many years ago, she would have to ride the bus, RTD at that time, to get to work. And they started work at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She would get a ride home in the evening because it was too late. But even that was a track for her. And having to stand out in the heat or the rain with no shade or anything, I remember all that. And it's, as a child, you don't understand how negative and how humiliating that is for your parent to have to go through that, because all they want to do is protect you, to give you a better livelihood, and they make those sacrifices. But our county and our Metro system should do a better job and honor the people that are our riders. And I think we have a long way to go still.
Metro builds its own stations for the train. Why doesn't Metro just take ownership and do the bus shelters? Or is that an option on BRT, I guess?
You know what? It's something we need to explore. So I'm happy to figure out how we can help pay for that. In part, you have to understand where the funding sources are going to come. And I'm not quite sure Measure R and Measure M are really, that we have the fine language there. If we can have flexibility, maybe that's something my staff and groups like yours could explore. But I do think it's very important. I think the public may think that, well, we really are not concentrating enough on bus ridership. That's always been my #1 priority since I've been elected to the board, because I know, in fact, many of the people that I represent in my district whose household income may be no more than $18,000 for a family of 4. They are reliant on that bus system. If it's not on time, if they're not feeling safe, or they miss something, they could miss work, lose their job, and so many other things happen. It could be catastrophic. And I really don't think that picture's been presented to the Metro board adequately. So maybe that's something we can work on.
We'd love to. Moving on, the next question: with increasing costs and delays, the Measure M and 28x28 schedule seems to be collapsing while Metro prioritizes lower ridership projects. Do you think a time will come when Metro needs to reprioritize their projects to emphasize ridership and bang for the buck?
I hope so. I hope so. And I think that some members of the board are waking up to the realization that you can't have it all. And I hate to use that word, like putting more ornaments on the Christmas tree, because that's what the previous CEO used to say to us. But I'm looking at it from equity too. So don't shortchange the people who have been loyal to the service, the riders and others. And I really think that those voices need to be heard, and we need to have that equity, and we need to make sure that they're represented, and they need to have people like your organization and others helping to provide the data and statistics and information that could be so helpful in helping us formulate that policy. Because I have thought that way since the beginning. And I know Mike Bonin and I, when we first started, we were very big. I know I was a big advocate for more justice for our bus riders, because I just remember where I grew up and what I see and I hear, and I still see it in my district now. It hasn't changed.
The next question is about Metro Bike Share. So this person says there are currently 0 Metro Bike Share stations in South LA. I bike from West Side to downtown Skid Row to East LA to do work. How does the Metro Board decide where to establish and build a Metro Bike Share station?
I think it should be based on need, and sometimes if it isn't well documented in terms of establishing what that standard is or that need assessment, we need to do better, and maybe going out there and doing some surveys and talking to community and having town halls and meetings so that we can really figure out what people really want. And I think so many times we're taken advantage of, people of color, our communities, where we're not asked, we're told this is what you're going to get, or you're not going to get anything. And I disagree with that notion. So I do agree that things can change. I see it in my own district, in East LA, in the south east part of the district that I represent, far beyond even the San Gabriel Valley, where there are households, Pomona being one of them. Poverty levels are rocketing. Why are we not treating them equitably as well?
Thank you. Next question is from David Fenn. Measure M and state federal grant funding is a start, but we really need other funding. EIFDs have been proposed for lines like the West Santa Ana branch and Crenshaw North, but the county has historically been skeptical. Do you support EIFDs to support transit construction?
I think it's very helpful. I mean, I saw the first one come to fruition over in Laverne, the city of Laverne, and we're helping to create, improving upon a system of transportation that'll benefit the Foothill Gold Line as well as the Metrolink. So yes, absolutely, we should try to do that. I know that there are some people in the county that aren't going to agree with that because they want to see most of the money coming to the county. But in all fairness, we need to think about those areas that have been not provided with adequate support. And this is a reasonable way of creating some infrastructure and economic ability and opportunity. So I think there is an interest, and you see it kind of pollinating itself in other parts of the county now. So we got to move quickly. That's all I can say. We got to move quickly.
The next question is from Joanne Muller. As UCLA seeks designation as a Hispanic serving institution, we are very focused on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project to ensure it is accessible and equitable to all Angelenos. Can you speak to connecting the Sepulveda Transit Corridor to UCLA, including connections to Northeast LA via the Purple Line, et cetera?
Really important. I mean, I know that we're still obtaining information there, and I understand that UCLA, I have people from my district commuting, and I've heard from them 2 or 3 hours on the freeway, or just trying to figure out how to get there. And people that are also employed there that have been working there for many years and have had to put up with that. So I agree, we need to make it accessible. And it is a hub. It's one of our largest institutions. In fact, I have 3 sisters that graduated from UCLA. And can you imagine? We grew up in the San Gabriel Valley. How hard was that? Yes, we need to do more, and we need to make sure that we have equitable standards established so that we can make sure that people have easy access and mobility and affordability as well, because that's also equally important, especially for students.
I think we have time for one last question, and then I did want to give you a space in case you have any last words you want to impart on us. So this person says, I am a resident in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. The metro buses take a very long time and the bike path along San Fernando Road is not complete yet. It is still in process in Sun Valley. What is the Board of Supervisors plan to dedicate more bike paths and increase the number of metro buses?
Well, I don't represent the area, but I'm certain that there's going to be, advocacy there. And I hope that people will let my staff know so that we can work with the local elected officials as well as the metro board members that represent the area so that we can advocate for that. Because I see the San Fernando area very much like the San Gabriel Valley in many ways. So it's no different, but we just have to continue to have our voices heard and elevated and really, if there's an opportunity and change that we're going to see even on the County Board of Supervisors, you're now going to have someone that really may exclusively represent San Fernando. And I know who you represented, and not represented, but advocated for. And I hope that she makes it. And I hope that, and I'm pretty sure she'll be very, very much an advocate.
Great. Well, I think we are almost out of time. Is there anything else you would like to add or say as we close out?
Thank you for your help. And it's been good talking with you all. And I hope that you'll continue to work with my staff, Martin and my team, and also with my field offices, because we now have a larger portion of Northeast. We go all the way now to East Hollywood. And there's a lot of folks there that, as you know, are very dependent on the bus service. So we want to make sure the connections are there, that it's speedy, that it's accurate, on time, that it's safe and clean, and that we have shade, and that we do all the things that we're able to do in other parts of the county, and not disadvantage those communities just because they may not have loud voices or attorneys or lobbyists to represent them.
Well, Supervisor Solis, thank you so much for being here and for your time. We know how busy you are, and it really means a lot to us in our community that you're here. I want to remind everybody else, the next one will be on August 10th at 5 p.m. with Tokes, Secretary of CalSTAR, which we're also very excited about. So thank you so much for being here, Supervisor, and good night, everybody.
Sí se puede. All right.
Sí se puede. Good night.
Muchas gracias.
Igualmente.